Continuous identification with the stream of thinking leads to a very serious dysfunction in one's sense of identity, because then your sense of who you are, your sense of I-ness is derived, your sense of self is derived from whatever your mind is telling you about yourself. Ideas, opinions, viewpoints about yourself. In other words, your sense of who you are is derived from thought. And that was recognized already by the ancient teachers like the Buddha as erroneous, an illusion. It is in all the ancient teachings expressed in different words, there is a deeper sense of self possible to humans that is not thought, where you truly sense yourself, but not as a story in the head. So you no longer derive your identity from something you are telling yourself in your head, which is extremely limiting, and we call that in spiritual terms ego. It's not quite the same way in which Freud uses ego. So this is when we spiritually use the word ego, basically means complete identification with the stream of thinking and complete absence of awareness. So you are then, it's not only the thinking, of course, then what you say and what you do, your actions, are totally controlled by the conditioned mind, conditioned by the past, reactive patterns. So this is how many people, they relive or live out their parents' unconsciousness, how the faulty upbringing, the dysfunctional upbringing of their parents, they then inflict it on their children. It often goes back many, many generations, similar dysfunctional patterns. So you inherit, the conditioning is inherited, it occupies your mind until somebody comes and says, you told me before we met, this happened to you, you had a very dysfunctional upbringing. And then it can happen, the buck stops here, and your awareness suddenly comes in, and you are no longer forced to reenact the old conditioning of your mind. And for this to stop, this awakening needs to happen. And that basically is the essence of spiritual awakening, which is sometimes misinterpreted. People think spiritual awakening is when you suddenly see, I suddenly saw the angel came towards me. Or you say, God spoke to me. Mostly it's your mind. But so it's. You're going to say something?
No. I was just holding on to every word, and I was waiting for it to come out, and then you stopped.
So the wonderful thing is it's not that difficult, really, to step out of the stream of thinking. One way, of course, is meditation. The traditional approach is you have certain periods of time, once or twice a day, when you sit down, close your eyes, and instead of involuntarily being drawn into the continuous stream of thinking, you usually, with meditation, you have a technique or method. You focus your attention on one thing, which could be a mantra that you repeat. It could be your breathing. It's a very ancient meditation. It could be the inner feeling in your body, the sense of aliveness that pervades your body. In other words, you take attention away from thinking. And that's already a great realization that you are able, actually have a choice of directing attention. You don't have to go with your attention all the time where the habitual thought patterns want you to go. The habitual thought patterns want your attention every time. Every thought says, I'm matter, give me your attention, follow me, they go this way. And another negative thought, and another one, and another one.
Yeah, I was just going to comment now. Yeah. I'll say something. There was a great analogy made getting to what you were earlier talking about, which is you can't let yourself out of prison unless you actually know you're in prison.
Yes.
And I think that's yes. really the key.
Yes.
So if your environment, it completely surrounds you and you're always there, you don't even have a recognition that you're not there. And it's interesting because for myself, and Eckhart and I were talking earlier about, and he was just talking about this event where he woke up. But if you think about what happens to a number of people who have engaged either in chronic negative thought, often manifested by negative behavior, they get so down, and this is like an addict, right? They finally get to very bottom, and it's either they're going to die or there has to be this transformation. And this is when you see these sudden, I think, breaks that can give you insight or, unfortunately, sometimes can lead to death. But I think we talk about these techniques to learn these things, to how to separate, if you will, that ego or that negative talk, and one is certainly mindfulness. But really, one of the things that's really interesting is how is it that the brain is able to do this in this one instant? And this is one of the things that I think, looking at the neuroscience of this, we're trying to learn. Because you have spent, I know, and continue to spend many hours in introspection, and we have monks who spent 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 hours, but I don't think many of us have the ability to spend 10 or 20 or 30,000 hours trying to get there. Can you?
Okay. I don't think it's necessary to spend... meditation is a wonderful tool for many people, and even meditation is not necessary for everybody. Some people awaken spiritually without ever coming into contact with any meditation technique or any spiritual teaching. They awaken simply because they can't stand the suffering anymore. And then something inside them snaps suddenly, and there is a disidentification from thinking. This, for example, has happened to people that I have met and known, people who had a serious illness, fatal. They were told they only had a very limited amount of time to live. So it's almost as if future had been removed from them. And a lot of one's thinking is to do with what's the next thing that's going to happen. That's very common. So, and when the future is removed, then kind of, or whenever you mentally project yourself to some future, every future, by the way, is a thought. Except from a thought of future, there is no future because nobody's ever experienced the future. So you can verify it for yourself because, okay, let's see if you can ever experience the future. No. So what is the future? A thought in your head, basically. Without that, there's only ever the present moment. And what is the past? Except a thought in your head, because for anything to be, life or being, is actually inseparable from present moment. Nothing can be, exist, live that is not now. Nothing can live in the past, and nothing can live in the future. No, so past and future are strongly connected with thinking. And so if you're being told that you basically have no future, yes, you could take refuge in the past and think only about the past, but what happens to these people who've been told sometimes that they have a very serious illness, only have a few more months to live? They are forced into the present moment because there's nothing else for them anymore. There is no more future to escape into mentally. So they are forced into the present moment, into what I call the state of presence, which is that state of being awake, and they go, that means the entire mind-made sense of self, the egoic sense of self that is based on conceptualization, collapses, and there is something arises that is just pure awareness, and they go like, if I may act it out, whereas before they were identified continuously with the thinking me, the self, me. Oh, so dreadful. And then they think only 6 more months to live is the worst fate that could happen to a human, and it could if you're in your thoughts. And then suddenly something snaps and they go out into, oh, there's only this moment. And so there's an intense awareness of the present moment. By chance, I read last week in the BBC news. There's an English pop musician, I can't remember his name unfortunately, who has just been told that he has pancreatic cancer and has 6 months to live. And he said, and this is a very rare case, usually people go into deep suffering first before they come out of it, if they do. This man was told that he had pancreatic cancer and only a few more months to live, and he walked out of the doctor's office, and he said he was in a state of total exhilaration and elation, because suddenly he was absolutely present, and he looked at every blade of grass, and every little thing was intensely alive. He said, I've never lived like that. And why was I so worried about my problems all my life? Why did I miss all that? So he said it was the most wonderful thing that ever happened to him. And this is rare to immediately go there. But so there's a potential when you suffer. I've also had many letters, communications from people in prison who say, my sentence is either life or my sentence is another 10, 20 years. And I've read your books or I've listened to a talk and suddenly I realized something and I became totally peaceful. So several people in prison have gone there because they have stepped out of thinking and they realized the source of their unhappiness actually was not the actual situation, although normally it would be regarded as pretty bad to be stuck in a prison cell, and even worse, knowing that you're going to be in for another 20 years or the rest of your life. So they realized that ultimately their suffering was not due to the situation, but to the mental commentary about the situation. And so the mental commentary became so unbearable, it collapsed by either with the help of a spiritual teaching and sometimes by itself. And what remained was just a sense of pure presence, awareness, mindfulness. And that is the real spiritual awakening, when something emerges from within you that is deeper than who you thought you were, the personal sense of self. So the person is still there, but one could almost say that something more powerful shines through the person. And so, but you don't have to wait for the diagnosis by the doctor or to be put in prison. Maybe that's good news. No, I don't think you either you have to do 30,000 hours of meditation or live in an ashram for 20 years. Once you get a glimpse of it, you can invite it into your life, in daily life. I call it mini meditations, and actually step out of thinking and into presence.